I'm not sure it particularly makes sense to try and answer such an expansive question, but maybe the best way to sort of respond is to explain what we did within the context of the conference here, which was to basically take an old form of measuring the time, a very ancient form of measuring the time, which is a sundial, and in some sense update that for the contemporary condition, if you like, or contemporary time. And the way we did that was to make a sort of digital version, so a sort of updated version to run on and through contemporary computers that is based on network time, on computer network time, and how that is measured rather than the sun, basically. Maybe you can describe more technically.
Yeah, maybe. Well, maybe I'll describe it in different words, and actually that between the two is probably some indication of what the thing really is. So the project that we made is hosted on a website called serverdial.org. On that website is a three-dimensional software model of a sundial, and this 3D software model works based on where in the world you are. So a sundial would be designed differently in Aarhus or in Rome or at any point of different latitude, distance from the equator across the world. So it's not to do with how far east or west, but rather just north and south. So this software project uses its position of where the device is that you're looking at it to determine two things: the angle of the gnomon, which is the piece of the sundial that casts a shadow, typically the stick essentially, and then also the placement of the numbers around a circle, which is the other part that changes depending on latitude. This software sundial was made after a proposal that we were working through to make a physical sundial. And that first proposal was in Toronto, and that project that came within weeks of being manufactured and installed and was canceled at that point. We since then re-proposed that physical sundial here in Aarhus, which did not get too much traction either, or hasn't worked out yet either. So we made the software dial as a way to be able to propose and realize this sundial for other places in the future as well. And actually, I think this description of a work that's continually in motion or in movement, in progress. Actually, if I was going to attempt to answer to what is contemporary about this idea, I would say it's exactly that. That aspect of it, that it is something that's continually in the process of becoming. And that way of that kind of status of it, of being something that's in movement, seems to me, I see that everywhere around me right now, and that feels like of the kind of thin moment of the contemporary right now.
I think just to sort of give an idea, if that's kind of visible on the screen, I mean, this is basically the
You want to come in closer? Be the hand.
That's the software kind of in operation. It's a website called serverdial.org, as David said, and that's sort of going to be available and perpetually available for as long as the server lasts. It works by, like, if you see it in this format, it looks a little crazy and is kind of floating around itself. That's because it only works when it's horizontal, so you're not going to be able to see that on the camera. But when it's flat,
but you'll kind of see it.
Sort of. When it's flat, it forms. You form a perfect circle, and there's a sort of purple bar that's representing, or is the equivalent to, the stick in a physical sundial, and then there's a shadow or an inverse shadow, which is the white element, and the white element is pointing to the particular time based again on where we are at the moment. There's another version of this, or a kind of advert for this, elsewhere in the museum at the moment. And just to emphasize one point that David said, which is very important for this, is that it's both something that you can use as a clock, if you like, But more importantly, or at least equally as importantly, it functions as a tool for if you were to make a physical sundial anywhere in the world. This is a tool to be able to measure the angle of the stick, which is specific to the location, and the position of the numbers on the circle, which of course change according to longitude and latitude as well. So it's both called a functioning clock, and it's a tool for making a sundial. And maybe I'll just add a sort of final aspect a final way in which this might allude to aspects of the contemporary condition in a sort of pithy way, which is that it's a very simple looking tool on the surface, but it has an incredible amount of kind of programming and sort of coding underneath it in the sort of in the basement that you don't see, of course. So it's a simple thing with an incredibly complex background and backstory in this case.